Hey, it's Sol with Friday's news. This recording's going to be a little bit jagged. It's about 1 hour until the Q&A with brand spanking new game director Ian Hazzikostas. So let's just get started now. Our top story of the week is pretty obvious. Tom Chilton, the game director of World of Warcraft, has just stepped down. He's moving on to other projects, and in his place is in fact Ian Hazzikostas, the former assistant game director. Nah, come on dude, freaking anyone saw this coming. Tom has worked on the World of Warcraft since its very beginning, so that marks, well, a little over 12 years. And from what little research I've done, no, I haven't really done any research, I haven't seen anyone that's worked on a single game for over 12 years. So I'm sure that anyone who's spent a pretty significant chunk of their career on a single game or within a single company, like how it was with Chris Metzen, I'm sure that, after a certain point, you've gotta move on. And it was easy to see this coming. I mean, Tom has been the director for, this many number of years. Meanwhile, Ian comes in and becomes the assistant game director. I don't know how Blizzard works on the inside, but what in the world is an assistant game director? It was pretty obvious to see that as soon as Ian got that promotion to assistant game director that he was going to get groomed to eventually take this position. So within the context of this speculation, this departure from Tom is planned. Him moving to whatever the heck project that's going on, it's been planned. So whatever project has been that he's going to has been something that's been in development for a little while. As for what it is, it really could be anything. I mean, there are forums that are just blowing the heck up with speculation. So if you feel like speculating, because we've been doing the whole speculation theme this entire week, hey, leave a comment below. Let's talk about what the heck could be going on. As for Ian, it'll be really interesting to see how the ship will kind of change course under his leadership. Now, of course, I don't know what Blizzard's development process is, but at least regarding the game director, think of him as like the captain. So while he may not be able to do things like manipulate raiding counter mechanics, which is what he did before, it's probably going to be more on him to decide the number of bosses in a raid, how many raids that they're going to have, how many tiers are going to be in a given expansion. So while Ian has been assistant game director for a good while now, I'm sure that between him and Tom, they kind of bounce ideas back and forth, and from there that kind of decides the iteration of the game for the next number of years. I have a feeling that while Ian is going to kind of finish up the stuff that Tom has been working on, it's still going to be a good couple of years until we actually see something that has been almost entirely game directed by Ian Hazzikostas. But anyway, I wanted to wish the best of luck to Ian. He's going to have a pretty hard job, and well, heck, he has the interview coming soon, so he does get some props for being kind of the face of World of Warcraft. And of course, a thanks to Tom for the 12 years of work that he's done, and good luck with that Diablo free-to-play MMO. And speaking of dumb speculation, the Blizzcon map and schedule has been released, so you know what that means. It means readers are going through the time indexes and every little detail on the map to try and find out what the heck is going to be announced. What's going to be the big thing that's going to blow everyone's socks off. And at least when I look at it, I'm not seeing anything that indicates there's going to be a mind-blowing, pants-creaming kind of announcement. So I'm looking at the schedule and I'm going to note a couple of outliers. The Diablo 20th anniversary thing is later in the day, which mostly tells me that there's not going to be a major announcement, or even if there is kind of a major announcement, there's nothing to really show. There's nothing to reveal. And even if there is, it's nothing that can wait until the Q&A panel for the next day. Historically, the bigger announcements from BlizzCon take place in the main stage, kind of immediately after the opening ceremony. In this case, it's going to be Hearthstone stuff, so predictably a Hearthstone expansion is expected to be announced. It's curious that the single panel for Heroes of the Storm is called State of the Game, at least according to what I'm reading here from MMO Champion. So I'm not a big fan of MOBAs, but I did like playing Heroes of the Storm when I was playing it. So it's kind of sad that it's in not a very good state, at least in my opinion. But I'll skip the other games. I mean, come on, this is Warcraft Weekly, not whatever. The fact that they have at least one panel going for World of Warcraft, at least on the first day, and then on the second day, they have the typical Q&A that they always have. But on top of that, they also have this whole design retrospective thing, which is a little interesting. I think it would be kind of cool if they revealed things like, hey, these are the design ideas that we had that totally sucked, or we ended up not doing them, or we ended up kind of pushing them back, or whatever. But at least from what I'm seeing here, it looks like hopes are fading very, very fast about any possibility of announcing legacy servers. But in the end, despite the speculation, we just don't know. I'm still super stoked about going and hanging out with friends and meeting up with guildmates, checking out what's up, alcohol, chicken and waffles. Anyway, moving on. An interesting event is going to go down shortly after BlizzCon. From November to December, Blizzard is going to hold a kind of Mythic Keystone competition between college players. There's going to be prize money, qualifiers, and all that stuff, and basically what's going to happen is that PvE players are going to compete and kind of race through Mythic dungeons. As we get to the semifinals and the finals, the dungeons are going to get a little bit harder. The Keystone level is going to go up, different affixes are going to be in place. So I think this is pretty cool. It's designed to be a pretty low-key kind of tournament, and for good reason, because at least in my opinion, live PvE competition is boring. Obviously, people get more entertainment, they get more of a kickoff doing PvP because you're trying to kill each other. Essentially, this kind of competition isn't too different from what, like, qualifying races for like NASCAR or Formula 1 or things like that. You're not really interacting with each other, you're just trying to beat each other's time, which is still cool. There's still that competitive nature. So I'm sure we're going to see pretty inventive comps. We're probably going to see stuff that no one has bothered trying out before, but somehow, shaves off a couple of seconds off of time. And I probably will watch a little bit of it, so good luck to those teams. Sorry, just a little joke from the kind of technical difficulty that happened during the Q&A. So there were a couple tidbits that I got out of that. One is that the 7.1 patch is going to drop on October 25th. Yes! When Ian first said that, I was like, oh crap, well, BlizzCon's going to like screw everything over because of the raid and how we're going to progress, how we're going to experience it. But then they also said that the Trial of Valor raid isn't going to open until, I think it was like 1 week, 2 weeks. I'm like forgetting stuff already. It's going to open after BlizzCon. So yeah, it was 2 weeks after the patch. Alright, so just to reiterate, October 25th, 7.1's coming out. 2 weeks after that, which is after BlizzCon, Trial of Valor raid will start. One correction that I want to make for myself that I don't know, I guess I must have missed it, or they might have stated this clearly, is that regarding artifact research will be as short as 3 days, and I think in an earlier video I said that it can theoretically be as short as 1. Currently that's not in place right now. Right now it's only at 3 days if you're considered catching up to your main. So ultimately, depending on how far behind your alts are, it might take a little while for you to really start ramping up that artifact knowledge and get your artifact itself up and running. But Ian did say that they're kind of looking into other ways to possibly get you caught up. Another gem from the Q&A is that the action cam is coming back. Yes! I believe it was Bellular that had a recent video that talked about the action cam being another thing in the PTR. I didn't want to quite talk about it yet because I wasn't sure if they were going to revisit or otherwise re-implement the action cam. For all I know, they were just kind of experimenting with it and trying to fiddle with it for a little bit, but we may not see it till later. But thankfully it is coming in 7.1. It's going to be enabled through console commands just like it was before, but thankfully it's not going to be auto-implemented in the buggy way that it was previously. I'm going to have a link to Bellular's video in the description because that's kind of recent, but a couple months ago I did a video on an add-on called DynamicCam that's hopefully still supported. The cool thing about the add-on is that it'll allow you to manipulate the camera not just to kind of move around dynamically like the action cam will allow, but it'll allow you to fix the camera in a certain spot. So a big sweet spot for me would be to take, instead of having your character in like the center of your screen, you can kind of like put it like down here or so you can get a kind of a wider angle, I guess. I don't know the terminology. It just looks better. It's gooder. I like it. It's so bigly, whatever. Ian also made a very interesting statement about bring the player, not the class, where he kind of wants to step that back a little bit to bring the class and not the player. And I think it's a pretty interesting kind of reversal from how things were before. So now it looks like we're going to see a little bit of what Ian's direction is. It looks like he wants to kind of bring the class identity back into World of Warcraft. These aren't Ian's words, but it looks like it was a concern of that the whole bring the player not the class kind of approach. I guess in a way it led to the whole approach of class homogenizing, where everyone kind of had very similar skill sets or kind of similar buffs, things that they can bring into a raid. So as I said earlier in the video, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what kind of direction Ian takes the game. The last thing that Ian said that interested me was the whole thing about tuning and how the viability of a certain class or spec, the perception of that spec seems to be kind of skewed by the representations that we see on things like World of Logs and things like that. He made a good example with fire mages, how the best mages period, they go fire because someone said that they someone said go fire. Meanwhile, the other mage specs are underrepresented. Not just the fact that there are that there's less data to go with, but the best players aren't taking part in that space. They're all doing fire stuff, so that kind of makes things feel worse. And it sucks because I'd prefer to play a frost mage in a raid. So ultimately, apart from Sims, which also has its pros and cons as to whether or not they're viable gauges of viability, it just doesn't seem possible to really nail down, what's the best class, what's the most viable class, and to try to tune that properly, at least not without making really tiny incremental changes like Blizzard has been doing. I guess the only way to really find out what is the most viable thing is to take like a single person who happens to be the greatest player in the game and give him like all the best in slot gear and just put him into a raid setting and just have him fight like day in and day out. Don't let him out. So anyway, that is it for me for the week. I'm glad I stuck around to cover the Q&A. There was some pretty interesting information. Feel free to go over to twitch.tv/Warcraft to check out the VOD whenever they get around to releasing that. And thanks for making it to the end of the week. I know I put a couple of videos out throughout the week, so hopefully if you guys saw them, that you liked them, and hit the like button, or you're a subscriber, that'd be awesome. But it's time for me to get going. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. I'm Soul. Stay breezy, guys.